We are continuing our series on leadership, learning from men of the Bible. And this time, we want to learn from Nehemiah. Leadership, Nehemiah style. Let me remind you that when you talk about a leader, we are talking about a man of influence. When you talk about a leader, we are talking about somebody helping a group to move from their current comfort zone to a better place where the whole team, not the leader, but the whole team will benefit. Leadership is not for the benefit of the leader. Leadership is for the benefit of the team. And the leader is only part of the team. So you can be a leader at any level. You can be leading in a classroom as a student. You can be leading as a mother, leading your family. You can lead in the church. You can lead in the marketplace. Nehemiah was a marketplace leader, and we want to draw lessons from him. But who was Nehemiah? Let me introduce him. There are 3 Nehemiahs in the book of Nehemiah. The third Nehemiah was the governor of Jerusalem who helped rebuild the wall of the city. He was the son of Hakaliah. He is the one who wrote the book of Nehemiah. And that's the guy whose lesson we are seeking to cover. And my prayer is that you are going to be the kind of person who is going to listen to Nehemiah asking, how can I be like Nehemiah? How can I do things like him? Because when you do that, what will happen is that the blessings of Nehemiah will become your blessings. He paid a high price to learn what was right, the right way of leading. You will be able to just draw from him. Some people always want to learn from their own mistakes, but you also can learn from the mistakes of others. Even so, as we go through this guy, it's important too. Nehemiah lived in BC, or rather 445 BC. And he found that what concerned him was the deplorable condition of those who survived the exile and were still staying in Jerusalem. The wall of the city had been broken down, the gates had been burned, and the people were in distress. And you can read that in Nehemiah chapter 1. Upon hearing this, Nehemiah mourned for many days, fasting and praying to God. When he got the report about the people and the city, he didn't ignore it. He prayed about it. And that gives us the first lesson of a good leader. He is touched by the problems of his followers. What made Nehemiah, book of Nehemiah be written, and the whole story about Nehemiah, came from the story he had heard about Jerusalem touching him. Are you touched by your people's needs? You hear a story about some people who are in your team, it doesn't bother you. You know, I remember a story I'm told by one of my bosses, how he told a boss, oh, you know, my wife is about to give birth, I need permission to go. He said, no, I've not employed your wife. And in the end, he did not give him permission to go. If you're the kind of a leader who is not touched by the things touching your followers, they will give you obedience, but malicious obedience. Commitment comes when the followers know that the leader cares about them. And in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1 to 4, we read, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, when I was in citadel of Sag of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant and that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble. That's why the whole thing starts. He is touched by it. Most people will not care what you know, will not care what your title is. They care once they know that you care. That's what bothers them. Oh, this guy is after me. When you know the boss is interested in you, you also be interested in the project the boss is involved in. That's what we are talking about leadership. So the first lesson we learned from Nehemiah is that it's important to be touched by what touches the people. Then they will be able to follow. The second thing we learned from Nehemiah is that A good leader knows his limitations. Do not start promising things you cannot achieve. Do not start thinking you are more capable than you are. You know, Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 5, for some days I fasted and prayed before God of heaven. Then I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who gives his covenant of love with those who love and obey his commandment. And he goes on in prayer. He discovered Jerusalem is in trouble. But if God doesn't get involved, there's no hope for Jerusalem. He doesn't say, oh, let me run there. No, he knows only God can sort it out. I want to ask you as a leader, do you know your limitations? Do you go for help, either from man or from God, as a way of admitting that you are critical? Or do you insist on doing things you have no capacity for? And in the problem, you put yourself into problems. Next, a good leader seeks to know how he really is and who God is. You know, you cannot go far or achieve success if you feel righteous by your own self, because you never quite measure up to God's righteousness. Yet people know, and people actually know your weaknesses. If you search for something to confess and find none, most likely you are not being honest. So the first thing I'm saying is, as a leader, know your limitation. But number two, please seek to know yourself fully. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And when you operate from a point of knowing yourself, but accepting yourself, because those two are different. You can know yourself, then you don't like yourself. You will not be a good leader. You must know yourself, so you honestly know your weaknesses and your strength, but you also have accepted yourself. You know that God did not make a mistake in creating you. You are okay the way you are with all your weaknesses, because it's not just weaknesses you have strength. When you operate from that position of knowing yourself, then you know where to seek for help. You know what to do and what to ask somebody to help you to do. Then you'll be a wonderful leader. You know, a good leader is also a good reader. You know, we should pray in line with God's promises. But if you are not reading, how will we know what those promises? Nehemiah reminded God in prayer, as he is praying in chapter 1, remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses. If you are not faithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if you exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a running place for my name. That's verse 8 on Nehemiah chapter 1. What are we learning? The fact that he was a good reader, when this problem comes, he is able to associate Jerusalem in trouble. But God said if we repent, he can sort out Jerusalem. Let me ask you, as a leader, are you a good reader? Somebody said a good pastor is the one who holds the Bible in one hand and the newspaper with another hand. Why the newspaper? So that he understands the people he is preaching to. He understands the congregation. Why the Bible? Because the Bible has the answer to the problems the people have. And we are saying, if you want to be a good leader, be like Nehemiah. Be well read, so you understand the picture and you can associate the problem your group is going with something you have actually read. Next, we learn from Nehemiah, a good leader must grow from private life to social life to public life. One of the things we see in Nehemiah, he starts with himself. He prays. Then he goes to Jerusalem. He goes around the city on his own without telling people what he wants. Then he finally gets the leaders of the Israelites in Jerusalem, talks to them. Then he gets everybody into the picture. He starts with the construction. Yeah, important, because that's what he needs to construct the wall. But beyond construction, he also looks outside that. And we are saying it's important to look at your private life, but it's also important to look at your social life and then look at your public life. A good leader does not specialize on public life without a social life. What do I call social life? Social life is the place your family and the people that are with you. The question is, how well are you doing? Private life is where it is just between you and God. So you must do well in your private life, but you must also do well in your social life. Because the things you are learning from God in your private life, test them in your social life with a small group of close friends before you can take them to public where people are likely to laugh at you and fight you. You know, next, a good leader is proactive. He thinks ahead. Always have an action plan with clear timelines ahead. We now move to Nehemiah chapter 2, and we read, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Annexus, when wine was brought to him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I take, that's now verse 7, may I take, may I take, may I have the letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates so that they will provide me safe conduct. This guy is praying. He has thought through the whole thing. How can Jerusalem, after praying, he now knows God will be with him because he is operating from what God has said, because he has read about it. Number two, he goes to the king, and he feels if the king says yes, he may not give me time to go to think. So he has thought through. If the king says yes, this is what I do. If the king says no, this is what I do. That's what we call being proactive. Don't act just when the problem is. Think about the problem in advance. Do not go to a project and each moment you have to think, what do I do? Like an architect, draw the completed building, then start working from the foundation. Anytime you have a kind of a leader who never thinks the totality of the project, he will end up taking his people around in circles. Nehemiah was different. He had thought through the whole project. That's why he's able to say, if the king gives him permission to go, along the way there are people who could kill me. Oh, if the king gives him permission, how will I get the timber to build my house? How will I get the equipment to be able to build Jerusalem? So when the king says yes, he is able to ask for all those things in totality because he had thought through them in advance. Are you that kind of a person who doesn't enter into a project without thinking the totality of the project? What will be the benefits of the project? What are likely to be challenges of the project? What are likely to be the hindrances? How can I go over the project? All before you start the project. That's what you mean by being proactive. The other thing we learned from this guy is the way he handled his boss. You know, he cannot go because the senior fellow. He's so senior that the king could not drink anything before he was given an okay by this Nehemiah. He was a senior civil servant. But he knows he can't go to Jerusalem without the king's permission. So we see in chapter 2, so the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This cannot be nothing but sadness of heart. And he knows how to react. The way he reacts, he knows how to handle the boss. Do you understand your boss? There's no way you'll work well and lead your people well if you don't know how to deal with others who can be hindrances in your project. Nehemiah knew how to handle his boss, how to manage the boss. You know, in verse 2 and 3 we read, I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city of Judah, where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it. But it's a process. And he does that even in the presence of the queen. It means he knows the timing. He knows the kind of timing that would be good. You know, maybe he knew the queen had a liking for him. You need to be careful. You can end up jeopardizing your project just because of your inability to know how to handle the offices of the government, the offices of the MP. Yet you are running a church. You must know how to deal with them. Criticizing people without reason will just make them be in a fight with you. Find wisdom on how you can deal with your boss, and that will be important. The other thing we learn about this Nehemiah, he was a man of prayer. Even in the middle of a discussion with the king, he still prays. Look at chapter 2, verse 4. The king said to me, what is it you want? Then I prayed to the King of heaven. In the middle, they are called ejaculatory prayers, where You have thought through, but you need God's presence. And he prayed. He was a man of prayer. Remember in chapter 1, he has been praying and fasting. But even now, before the presence of the king, he is in prayer. I can tell you, the challenges any leader will have, carrying the load of his followers, carrying the challenges of the project, or whatever it is he is leading, are such that if you carry it, you will be sleepless, and you could end up in depression. But when you learn how to take your cares on God, like the New Testament says, cast all your cares upon him, God, because he cares for you. Do not take problems onto yourself because you are the leader. Learn to take your people's problems and then hand them over to God, because he's going to handle them. A good leader is a man of prayer. He gets, that way he operates, not just from his strength, but from God's strength, who is able to help him. In the process, he learns how to handle the opposition. And you need to understand, as a leader, you should not be in shock whenever you have opposition, because opposition is expected. The more you succeed, the more people will fight you. The more you lead well, the more you'll find people.
I'll cut that. So just say the more you lead well.
The more you lead well, the more people are going to hate you. So you should not be surprised. And Nehemiah faced a lot of opposition. One of the problems of many people is that they get in shock when they discover somebody is planning their overthrow. They get in shock when they realize the person they have invested in is actually leaving them. You need to be aware that the devil is an arch-enemy to those who worship God. So you should not be surprised when challenges come your way. And it will be important. Let me just read Nehemiah 2 verse 10. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to to promote the welfare of the Israelites. Then verse 19, I answered them by saying, he's answering the enemies, the God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. What are we learning? He was ready for the opposition. So when it came, he was able to stand his ground. But more important, he doesn't stand his ground on his own. He tells them, the God of heaven will give us success. In other words, you are fighting me. I may not be able to handle you, but I believe in a God who can handle you. But you know, a good leader is a good listener. We learned earlier he's a good reader, but he's also a good listener. The only thing is that he listens and verifies. Our friend listened to his brothers were talking about Jerusalem, but he still had to verify for himself. He was not just relying on the rumors. He himself had to see the wall. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 11 we read, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. Then verse 17, then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in Jerusalem. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been ruined with the fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. Then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. So, you have heard the stories. You come ready to deal with the people, with the problem. No. Listen to them, but verify. He listened to the stories about Jerusalem, but he took 3 days just studying and verifying the facts. And one night, he picks a few people, and they go around without horses, because the horses are there, people will notice. But if you're just walking one horse with a few people, they will not tell. He researched. A big problem with a lot of leaders is they rely on rumors. They have grapevine, and they act on it, not realizing the moment your followers know that you rely on rumors, they will keep feeding you. And the guy who is your best man for the project will be thrown out of line by people who are lazy because they are jealous of him. My friend, whenever you get a report, do not ignore it, but don't act on it. Verify for yourself. Never say, I did it because I was told. Listening is important. You must be a good listener, but you must verify the facts if you are going to be a good leader. People who don't listen end up creating a lot of havoc in their leadership. It is important to understand the kind of trouble you're in. But what really gives you the greatest asset if you are going to be a leader? I think it's character. And Nehemiah was able to get a following basically because of character. In the king's presence, it was his character. He was told, hey, you are never dull. You are a jolly fellow. You are not moody. There must be a real serious problem here. What about if you are the moody guy? The king will not even notice you because he knows you are moody. He had a character of consistency. So when something is wrong, the king is concerned about it. But it was the same thing when he went to Jerusalem. He had a character that was consistent. Nehemiah chapter 4. Neither I, nor my brother, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when we went for water. He is the boss. He is the governor. And they had the attack. He could have the bodyguards look after him. But he stays in his clothes. He is ready to fight with them. What do you think that does? If the governor cannot remove his clothes and rest, how would anybody want to rest? He set up a good example. Verse 9. So I continued. What we are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending people money and grain, but let us stop charging interest. We will give it back, they said, and will not demand anything from them. We will do as you say. Why are these people bosses who have been lending money and exploiting? How come they have agreed with Nehemiah? Because of his character. He himself was lending money and not asking for interest. Then he says, I'm like you, but I'm lending. I'm not asking for interest. And because of his example, they said, we will do like you. Let me ask you, do you tell people to do what you say and what you do, not what you do? A good leader, his character is his asset. People will find it very difficult to do wrong when they know you are consistent in doing right. You are fair, you are just, and you have a moral upright character. It will make you to be a good leader. You know, a good leader also knows his team. You need to understand who you are working with. It was now time to put together a team to manage the city. He has already built the wall. He wants somebody who can manage the team. Nehemiah appointed men of integrity to assist him. You know, after the wall had been rebuilt and had set the doors in place, Nehemiah says, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hanani, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most people do. I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeeper are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some of their posts and some near their own houses. What a man. He knows who is near where. He knows where you live, so he tells you to guard the gate nearest you. He also understands who is available. He does not appoint them on the basis of their greatness. He appoints them on the basis of he was a man of integrity, who feared God, and did so more than most. Who do you appoint? Your relatives? He also could appoint his relatives, but he only appointed a relative who could pass the integrity test. Do you appoint people who are rich? No, riches will not help you. Do you appoint the educated? That's not enough. You need to look for people that have character. If you really want to be a leader, People must see clearly that the point you have appointed is a person with integrity. And I think it will be important to understand that if that happens, if they can see the people you are appointing are just people, then they will follow them also and they will support them. But if they realize a crook is the one you are appointing, they also realize if I want to be appointed, I should become a crook. And you end up with it. So, as we go towards finishing, what else can we learn from this leadership of Nehemiah? So, division of labor is one of the great things that we learned from him. He had a big project, but he divided up. Who will do this section of the wall? Who will do the other section of the wall? And that's very important if you're a marketplace leader. Have you heard the saying, everybody's work is nobody's work? If you say, oh, 20 of you, go and do that, whose work is it? Nehemiah was different. He was very specific on who did what, where. The fish gate, in Nehemiah chapter 3, the fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hasaniah. They laid its beams and put its doors and boats and bars in place. You can go through the whole chapter 3, seeing the division of labor. Clarity as to what to be done and who is to do it is one of the mark of a good leader. Never say blame everybody. When work is not done, you just say you are all terrible. No, go to the person who is responsible for the work. Divide up the work very well. But one of the things I want us to learn before we leave is what we read earlier. I answered them by saying, the God of heaven will give us success. But as for you, he's telling the enemies, telling non-Jews, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to them. They wanted to help. My friend, do you get help from wrong sources? You do a harambe and crooks are the ones bringing money to build your church. My friend, when you associate yourself with wrong people and involve the wicked in your project, there will be a problem. It's better to take longer period with your project because you are relying only on good people rather than involve people who will do the project quickly and the whole purpose of the project will fail. I think it's important. You know, the other thing we learned from him, consider people, not just the task. Nehemiah chapter 3 verse 9 says, and next unto them repaired Rephaiah the son of Hur, the ruler of the half part of Jerusalem. The next unto them repaired Jedaiah the son of Ruba, even over against his house. Why give somebody work where he has to walk a long distance? Why can't you give him to repair his house? You know, people who just think about the task will give anybody anywhere. But this Nehemiah was interested in people. So he gave them work near where they are. We are back to that issue. That if you really want to be a person who is going to get the following of people, it will be important that you show you are interested in them. And even when you give work, why can't you find out what somebody would like to do? Why can't you give him work near where he would enjoy doing it? And when you give somebody where he does not enjoy, why don't you explain yourself why he needs to do it? Then you know this guy thinks about me. This guy cares about me. Nehemiah was a man of the people. But three things as we finish. Nehemiah believed and trusted in God, not in himself. Nehemiah cared about people. Nehemiah was practical. He was able to spend time constructing, because there's no way Jerusalem would be okay when anybody, any Tom, Dick, Harry, can just run in and start killing people. They put a wall so that when you are inside, the people would have to fight very hard to come in. That's really what we are talking about when we talk about Nehemiah. He's a person who was project-oriented, but was interested both with the task and also with the people. So that in the end, they finished the project, but the project was all done within 52 days, but the people are also happy because of the way they had worked together. Is that true of you? May the Lord help us to be good leaders.